Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. You guys sent in some fascinating stuff this time around, and I'm excited to dig in.
Yeah, I was pretty excited to see this topic come up.
So we're diving into non-local consciousness. And, I've been looking over the stuff you all sent in from Tomasz Slieger,
Right.
the Institute of Noetic Sciences, and even some interesting stuff relating to the 2022 Nobel Prize in Physics.
Oh, wow.
And all this is going to help us answer a pretty massive question.
Okay.
What is non-local consciousness?
Right.
And can we actually experience it?
Yeah. It's a big question that has captivated thinkers for centuries. And what's fascinating is how our understanding of it is evolving. Tomasz Slieger, in the material you shared, talks about how we're all familiar with local consciousness, our day-to-day awareness tied to our physical senses and experiences. It's like our mind's home turf.
Right. Slieger calls it the tangible, the world we can directly interact with.
Yeah.
But then he throws in this whole other concept, the non-local. A realm that exists beyond our senses, beyond our normal understanding.
Yeah.
It's almost like,
and
this is how I've been picturing it.
Okay.
We're fish swimming in a giant cosmic fishbowl.
Oh, I like that.
We're aware of everything inside the bowl.
Okay.
That's our local experience.
Right.
But what lies beyond the glass, that's the non-local.
Yeah.
And it's a lot harder to grasp.
That's a fantastic analogy. It highlights the limitations of our perception.
Right.
We're so accustomed to our fishbowl reality that the concept of a boundless, non-local realm seems almost inconceivable.
Yeah.
And what's really interesting is that the 2022 Nobel Prize in Physics actually supports this idea.
Hold on. Quantum physics is backing this up.
It is.
That's wild.
Yeah, it was awarded.
So what exactly did they discover that relates to non-locality?
Well, they found that particles can be linked in such a way that they influence each other instantaneously, regardless of distance.
Wow.
It's like two particles are connected beyond the limitations of space and time, which is a pretty radical concept.
Yeah.
This challenges the classical view of physics and hints at a deeper, interconnected reality.
Okay, my mind is officially blown.
Yeah.
So we've got ancient philosophers and now Nobel Prize-winning physicists pointing towards this idea of non-local consciousness.
It's fascinating.
It makes you wonder if this non-local realm really exists. Or are we just trapped in our own little bubbles, unable to experience it?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right.
And this is where Slieger's work gets really intriguing.
Okay.
He proposes that our minds are trained to operate primarily within the local, within those familiar boundaries.
Okay.
This makes it difficult to even conceive of infinity.
Right. Or the boundless nature of the non-local.
So we're almost like prisoners in our own minds.
In a way.
Stuck in this limited way of thinking.
It can feel that way.
But if we are, how do we break free? How do we even start to understand, let alone experience, non-local consciousness?
That's where Slieger introduces a really interesting concept,
Yeah.
a method of cutting away mental boundaries.
What?
It's like taking a scalpel to the walls of our mental fishbowl.
Okay.
This technique echoes a principle from Advaita Vedanta.
Wow, so this isn't just some new age idea. This goes way back.
Oh, it goes back.
I'm already feeling a bit out of my depth here. What exactly does Advaita Vedanta say about all of this?
At its core,
Okay.
Advaita Vedanta suggests that our true nature is boundless and interconnected,
Okay.
not limited to the individual ego or our physical form. This aligns with the idea of non-local consciousness,
Right.
a reality that transcends the limitations of our individual minds and bodies.
Okay. The technique of cutting the edges
Right.
is essentially a way of stripping away the mental constructs that create the illusion of separateness.
Okay, I'm starting to get a sense of what this cutting away might involve.
Okay.
But how does it actually work in practice?
Right.
And more importantly, what does it feel like
Yeah.
to experience this non-local state?
Well, Slieger suggests that experiencing the non-local can be unsettling at first.
Oh, really?
Imagine suddenly perceiving reality without the familiar boundaries of your self-identity.
Oh, wow.
It's a radical shift in perspective and not always a comfortable one.
I can see how that would be a bit unnerving.
Yeah.
It's like our minds are programmed to cling to those boundaries for a sense of security.
Absolutely.
Losing them would be disorienting, to say the least.
Precisely.
But Flieger argues that this discomfort is often what prevents us from accessing the true potential of non-local consciousness.
It is. It's the fear of the unknown that holds us back.
So if we can overcome that fear, what's waiting for us on the other side?
Yeah.
What does this non-local experience actually feel like? What does it mean for our understanding of reality?
This is where things get really fascinating, because Flieger doesn't just leave us with abstract concepts. He provides specific examples of what this non-local state might feel like.
Okay, let's dive into those examples.
Okay, I'm all yours.
One of the most compelling examples he uses is the idea of flow state.
Oh, yeah.
That feeling of being completely absorbed in an activity where you lose track of time and sense of self.
Yeah.
It's like when you're skiing down a slope or riding a bike.
Right.
And everything just clicks.
Yeah.
You're not thinking. You're just being.
Yeah, I totally get that.
Right.
It's like when I'm writing and I get so lost in the story that I forget everything else.
Yeah.
It's almost like you merge with the activity itself.
Is that what Flieger's talking about?
Exactly. He suggests that in those moments of flow, we're tapping into a state of consciousness that transcends our usual limitations. Our sense of self dissolves.
Right.
And we experience a connection to something larger.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So it's not just about meditating on a mountaintop or having some kind of mystical experience.
Right.
We can actually access these states through everyday activities.
That's what makes this so exciting.
Yeah.
Flieger also points to the overview effect as another example of non-local consciousness.
Oh, right.
Have you ever heard of it?
Yes, I have.
It's something astronauts experience when they see Earth from space.
Yes. I remember reading about that in one of the articles from the Institute of Noetic Sciences.
Right.
They describe it as a profound shift in awareness.
Yes.
A feeling of interconnectedness with all of humanity and the planet itself.
Right. And what's so interesting is that astronauts from diverse backgrounds and beliefs report similar experiences.
Wow.
They describe a sense of awe, a humbling realization of the interconnectedness of all things, and a diminished sense of self-importance.
It makes you wonder if that perspective is something we could all cultivate.
Yeah.
Even without blasting off into space.
Right.
Like if astronauts can experience this shift in consciousness by literally changing their physical perspective, could we achieve something similar through the mental cutting away that Flieger talks about?
That's a brilliant insight, and it gets to the heart of what Flieger is suggesting.
Right.
By dissolving the mental boundaries that separate us from the world.
Okay.
We open ourselves to the possibility of experiencing a more expansive reality.
So if someone wants to try this cutting the edges technique, where do they even begin? Is there a step-by-step guide, or is it more of a personal exploration?
Well, Flieger doesn't provide a rigid set of instructions, but he does offer some guidance based on the principles of Advaita Vedanta. It involves first identifying a mental construct, something you normally perceive as sped from yourself, and then mentally erasing the boundaries that define it.
So you could picture an object like a tree or even a concept like time.
Yeah.
And imagine those boundaries dissolving until it merges with everything else.
Precisely.
Okay.
And as you do this, pay attention to how your perception shifts.
Right.
Do you feel a sense of expansiveness? A blurring of the lines between yourself and the object or concept?
Okay. I'm definitely going to try this later.
Yeah.
Sounds a little trippy.
It can be.
But in a good way.
Right.
But I have to ask, even if we can access these non-local states, is there any scientific evidence to suggest
That's a great question.
that this is more than just a subjective experience?
And it brings us to some really fascinating research that supports the idea of non-local consciousness. Remember that article you shared by Tresoldi on non-local perception?
Yes, sir.
That one really caught my attention.
It did.
It talked about experiments where people could accurately perceive information beyond their normal senses.
Right. That one really caught my attention. It talked about experiments where people could accurately perceive information beyond their normal senses.
That research, along with studies on phenomena like telepathy and precognition, suggests that our minds may be capable of accessing information that isn't bound by the limitations of space and time.
So there's actual scientific evidence that supports the idea.
There is.
That our consciousness can extend beyond the physical.
It seems that way.
That's mind-blowing.
It is.
This is all making me think about that famous quote by Arthur C. Clarke.
Okay.
Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic.
Right.
It seems like what we're talking about here is almost like a form of mental technology, a way of using our minds to access a realm that seems magical.
Yeah.
But might actually be a fundamental aspect of reality.
That's a brilliant way to put it.
Yeah.
And just like any technology,
right.
it requires practice and skill to master, but the potential rewards are enormous.
Yeah.
Imagine a world where we could tap into this non-local consciousness to solve problems,
right.
enhance creativity, and connect with each other on a deeper level.
Okay, now we're getting into some really exciting territory.
Yeah.
But before we get carried away with all the possibilities, I think it's important to acknowledge that this stuff can be pretty challenging to wrap our heads around.
Absolutely.
Where does all of this leave us?
Yeah.
In terms of understanding ourselves and the universe?
That's a great point.
Yeah.
And this is where philosophy can provide some helpful frameworks for understanding these concepts. One philosopher who's done some groundbreaking work in this area is David Chalmers.
Okay.
He's known for his exploration of the hard problem of consciousness,
right,
which essentially asks how our subjective experiences, our feelings and perceptions arise from physical matter.
Right. I've heard of that.
Yeah.
It's like, how do we explain the feeling of redness?
Exactly.
When we see a red apple?
Right.
It's not like there's a little redness molecule in our brains, right?
Exactly. And Chalmers suggests that understanding non-local consciousness might hold the key to solving this puzzle. He distinguishes between the first-person perspective, which is our subjective experience,
right,
and the third-person perspective, which is more objective and scientific.
Okay, so first person is how we experience the world from the inside.
Right.
While third person is more like observing from the outside.
Exactly.
But how does this tie into non-local consciousness?
Well, if our consciousness isn't confined to our physical brains, as the idea of non-locality suggests, then our first-person experiences might be tapping into something much larger.
Okay.
A field of consciousness that extends beyond the individual.
So instead of our minds being isolated inside our heads, they're actually part of a vast interconnected network.
Potentially, yes.
That's a pretty radical shift in perspective.
It is.
And it raises some fascinating questions.
Yeah.
How do our individual first-person perspectives interact within this larger field of consciousness?
Right.
Does this challenge our traditional notions of self and identity?
Those are great questions.
Wow, those are some big questions.
Yeah.
It feels like we're on the edge of a whole new understanding of what it means to be human.
I think we are.
But with all this talk about expanding consciousness and venturing beyond our usual limits, I keep thinking back to something Flieger mentioned.
Okay.
He said this process can be kind of scary.
You're right. He did say that.
Yeah.
He described it as feeling intangible and unsettling.
Yeah.
Especially for those who aren't accustomed to that kind of mental state.
Right.
It's as if losing those familiar local boundaries creates a sense of unease, a fear of the unknown.
It's almost like we're programmed to cling to our limited perspectives, even if they're holding us back.
Right.
It's like that saying, better the devil you know than the devil you don't.
Exactly.
So if someone is listening to this and feeling a little intimidated by the idea of exploring non-local consciousness, what advice would you give them? How do we overcome that fear and embrace the unknown?
Well, I think Flieger offers some really valuable insights.
Okay.
First and foremost, he emphasizes patience. Just like learning any new skill.
Yeah.
Accessing non-local consciousness takes time and practice. Don't get discouraged if you don't have a life-altering experience right away.
It's about the journey, not just the destination, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's about cultivating a sense of curiosity and wonder.
Yeah.
Approaching this exploration with an open mind and a playful spirit.
Right.
Don't take it too seriously.
Yeah.
And allow yourself to be surprised by what you discover.
It's like we're explorers venturing into uncharted territory.
Yeah.
We don't know exactly what we'll find, but we're open to the possibilities.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
And finally, I think it's helpful to remember that you're not alone on this journey.
Right.
There are communities and resources available for those who are interested in exploring non-local consciousness.
Yes. Connecting with others who are also exploring these ideas can provide support, encouragement, and a sense of shared purpose.
Absolutely.
Well, this deep dive has certainly been a mind-expanding experience for me.
Yeah, it has for me too.
We started with a simple question.
Right.
What is non-local consciousness? And ended up exploring ancient philosophy, cutting-edge physics, and even the nature of reality itself.
It's amazing how these seemingly disparate threads all weave together when you start to explore the mysteries of consciousness.
For anyone listening who's as fascinated by this topic as we are, we highly recommend checking out the sources we've mentioned.
Absolutely.
Tomasz Fleger's work is a great starting point, and the Institute of Noetic Sciences has some incredible research on non-local phenomena, like the overview effect.
It's fascinating stuff.
And of course, for a deeper dive into the philosophical side of things, David Chalmers is a must-read.
Absolutely.
We'll be sure to include links to all of these resources in the show notes.
Great.
And most importantly, don't be afraid to explore these ideas for yourself.
Yeah.
Pay attention to those moments in your life where you feel a sense of expansiveness, interconnectedness, or a blurring of the boundaries between yourself and the world around you.
Right.
Those might just be glimpses of the non-local trying to poke through.
Good point.
This deep dive has definitely left me with a sense of wonder and a thirst for more exploration.
Yeah.
I hope it sparks something in you too.
Me too.
Remember, the universe is a vast and mysterious place.
It is.
And our minds might be capable of far more than we've ever imagined.
Absolutely.
Keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep diving deep.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey into the depths of non-local consciousness.
Yeah. Thanks everyone for listening.
Until next time, keep those minds open and those curiosities